Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, when you hear that tune, you know it's time for the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and also available on all good digital audio platforms wherever you are in the world. I'm Alexander Leitner and this is edition 151. It's week 13 of 2024 and welcome to you. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect on social media at Sandton Times, or visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za. And as always, I welcome your thoughts, your questions, your comments, your feedback. It's always good to hear from you. And of course, if you're listening live on the radio, on the wireless, on Mix 93.8, and not at any later stage, well, you can take advantage of that by using the WhatsApp line. It is open on 0848 220938. That's 0848 220938. And a very special welcome to everyone listening. If you are new or established, if you're in Johannesburg, Pretoria, or anywhere else in South Africa, local or international, on air or online, well, wherever you are, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land, and it's great to have you join me once more. And talking about joining, Vincenzo's back behind the mixing desk, and I really hope you've had a good, longish, how would you define it? Rest-filled human rights day weekend. A myriad of long weekends heading our way over the next couple of weeks. So it's always a bit of a weird one, I think, if you are working, because you have a whole bunch of short weeks. And I'm not quite sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm sure there's a lot of people who would argue to say, yes, a 4-day week is just what I need. And there's another 4-day week coming up this week. But I had a pretty good week last week, which was also a 4-day week. It kicked off with some dinners, and there's one of them that I'm going to be touching on later on in the show. But there was another one with Anthony Rupert Wines, and that was on Friday night in the Cupola suite of the Michelangelo Towers. If you look at Sandton's skyline, it was probably the tallest building for a very long time before the Leonardo came along. But it's got that very colorful dome at the top of the tower, right next to Sandton City, which lights up at night in all kinds of different colors. And that on top, that dome, is essentially a 3-story penthouse called the Cupola Suite. If you didn't know that, it's not occupied all the time. There's people who stay there. You can rent it out as a hotel room, but you can also rent it out for events. And Anthony Rupert Wines decided to have a dinner in there, which was quite spectacular because the views from there are unbelievable. I mean, apart from seeing this penthouse, which is unique in itself, 3 stories. I think it's got 3 or 4 bedrooms. It's got its own little gym. It's got a beautiful swimming pool. It's, as I say, got the most remarkable views. There is also some space for a dinner for about 25 people. And it was a really fantastic evening. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and what an experience. And then talking about experiences, last week was also the launch of a new fragrance called Iconic Fragrances at the Houghton Hotel. Very, very, very decadent fragrances. I mean, there's one that I really liked, which was Oud Royale. And Oud isn't for everybody, but I got into Oud during lockdown, thanks to a friend who educated me on the ways of fine fragrances. They've now brought out a range of fragrances which are very affordable, but are competing with some of the best fragrances that you come across in the stores. And they're available at the hotel as well. So we had a chance to sniff or smell those and take in the scents in so many ways, and that was really spectacular. So that was my week. But coming up on this week's show, he hosted a talk in Sandton a few weeks ago, and I managed to get some time with him this hour to chat about venture capital and funding entrepreneurs in Africa. So I'll be chatting to him in just a bit. Then, if you're looking for somewhere new to go with the family or just take a drive out of Sandton, there's a new food market and park in Muldersdrift. The full story is coming up. If Budget Day is a distant memory and you're not too sure how it has impacted you, well, one area is your income tax bracket. And I'll be chatting to an expert on the topic to fill in all the details. And finally, there's a new Asian restaurant in the heart of Sandton that serves up fine dining in a whole new way. Stay tuned, and I'll give you all the details on that as well. We're heading into a marathon of long weekends, as mentioned, over the coming weeks. So let's keep things nice and easy with our first track for the hour as we kick things off. It's the new one from Bon Jovi titled Legendary. You switched on to the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8.
Promote your brand. Advertise your business.
Our audience could be your next client. Contact the Sandton Times today. The best of talk and music in 1 hour. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
This is the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and also available on all good digital audio platforms wherever you are in the world. And welcome to this week's hour. And as we get the ball rolling on another hour for another week in 2024, I'm thrilled to be joined by the managing partner of Condusive Capital, a venture fund. His name is Clive Butkow, and he recently spent some time in Sandton chatting to a group of people about venture capital and how to create a future. And I thought let's pick up on this conversation. It's always interesting when you've got interesting people visiting Sandton, in and out of Sandton. And Clive, it's great to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity.
Clive, you've got a very strong CV. If people go online and have a look at some of the interesting things that you've done in your life and also the things that you are doing, if you look back on some of the stuff that you've been involved with, what are some of the highlights that you sort of cherish?
Yeah, I think, I've spent time in Silicon Valley, and I've spent time in London building tech companies. And I mean, that I learned, it's all about learning, and I learned a fortune about what I am today and what I'm able to give back and mentor and entrepreneurs and other types of people. So I think that was the one thing. I then spent 28 years at Accenture, South Africa. I was the CEO when I left there in 2012. And then started and CEO and founder of AKIDO Venture Partners, which was one of the first digital disruptive Section 12J venture capital companies in the country, raised $250 million. We deployed to 11 investing companies. Companies are doing very well. And I resigned from there to start Condusive Capital at the end of December last year. So that's really been, a helicopter view of where I've come from.
I mean, Conducive Capital, like you've said, is your latest fund that you've gotten going. Give us a brief oversight as to what the fund aims to do and what it's all about.
Yeah, so firstly, I formed the partners are myself and Mitch Adams. Mitch was one of the co-founders of one of the top payments companies in South Africa called Ozo. So he left there a couple of years ago. And then, as I said, I resigned from AKIDO at the end of December. And Conducive Capital is really about, we want to raise about $50 million, so R1 billion. And it's investing in all the innovation and that we see in South Africa, the innovation we see in Africa. We're looking at probably 75% of our capital deployed into South Africa initially, and 25% of our capital deployed into Africa. But we're deploying into the very innovative, very transformative digital platforms, software-enabled, that are very low capital efficiency, low capital costs. And we see these businesses all the time. So there's an enormous amount of innovation in South Africa specifically, but what we don't see is an enormous amount of capital. So what's lacking from, growing from a five-man team to a 500-man team or woman team is capital. And we actually aim to plug that gap and help with the transformation of and increase the fiscus and increase employment in South Africa. One of our goals as well is to train up Black women, the future of the Black woman venture capitalists. So we want to really invest in both direct and indirect mentoring for Black women, because there really is no surplus of venture capital in women specifically, and then in Black women there's hardly any. So we really want to try and plug that gap in the next 5 years and train and mentor and get that next generation of Black venture capitalist women into the marketplace.
Well, I'd like to touch on what you've just said. It's interesting you're talking about the lack of capital, because so often people have great ideas, but those great ideas, unfortunately, then eventually never see the light of day, because at some point they need some sort of cash injection or they need some sort of support. In places like the United States, we see venture capital or this kind of capital flow much easier. Do you find that South African venture capital is much more risk averse, that it has to be a 1 in 2 hit as opposed to a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 100 hit?
I think definitely, venture capital for me in South Africa is still a cottage industry. There's not, and I'm talking about tech now for a second. I'm not talking about in general venture capital. I'm talking about tech venture capital, a business that you can take to the 10x, 100x times return on capital. That's what I'm referring to. There's lots of good businesses in South Africa, but they're not necessarily venture capital investable businesses. So yes, we can talk about not having the risk, but these businesses won't actually get to the 10 to 100x return on capital. And hence, myself as a venture capitalist and a lot of my peers, we won't invest in those types of businesses. It doesn't make them bad businesses. They're just different businesses. They're not venture capital investable businesses. But there's no doubt that we don't look for 1 in 10. We look for 8 in 10. A baseball analogy I learned when I was in Silicon Valley was 262. So 2 home runs, you'll pay off your fund and you'll pay off all your investors. You'll make a very good return on capital. You get 2 home runs, you'll get 2 blowouts, you'll get 2 strikeouts, you'll get nothing. And the other 6, you'll get a 1, 2, 3, 4 times return on your capital. So that's what we look at. We look at also, it's a power law of venture capital. You're not going to get 10 out of 10, 100 X's. But if we can get 200 X's, we've done exceptionally well and returned a 30% IRR back to our investors. That's how we look at VC in South Africa.
How do you envision the future of entrepreneurship and startups in South Africa and obviously the rest of the continent? And I think we almost have to treat them slightly differently, or am I wrong in that?
Entrepreneurship is the future. In all honesty, if you look at the corporates today, if you look at the amount of retrenchments we've had in tech companies, in non-tech companies in South Africa, all over the world, there are so many more people now. They have to create their own future. What's interesting to me is they really are great entrepreneurs. They've got unbelievable vision. They've got the skills. There's an abundance of that. But the narrative has to be changed that it's like a second-class citizen if you go into entrepreneurship or you're taking too much risk. Because if you don't get out of your comfort zone, you're never actually going to be successful. So you have to actually get at your comfort zone. Entrepreneurship is the way out of this, this situation we have in South Africa, which is unemployment of 40%. The fiscus being reduced. So entrepreneurs are going to be the future. And I think there's a surplus now today. If you look at the valuations of entrepreneurial companies, they've come down significantly. So more palatable type of valuations. There's a lot more human capital out there because a lot of people are being retrenched and they've got great skills and they've got great networks. So they're going into entrepreneurship. Now's the timing. And that's why myself and Mitch have set up this fund now, because everything is about timing. And we think the timing there's no better time than now to actually raise a fund. And we can invest in these great entrepreneurs. We can help them with the capital, because without the capital, typically they are going to go over a cliff and they're probably going to end up with nothing. But with capital, they could be the next unicorn in Africa or in South Africa. So it's just a great opportunity for us to, really raise a $50 million fund and be able to capitalize some of these businesses that really need capital to help them scale both in South Africa, Africa, and globally.
Well, I'm in conversation with Clive Butkow. He's the managing partner of Condusive Capital, a venture fund. And we're going to talk a little bit more about funding Africa's next big entrepreneurs. We're going to take a quick break and more of this conversation right after this.
Follow the Sandton Times on social media.
At Sandton Times.
Connect with the Sandton Times. Email editor@sandtontimes.co.za.
Listening to the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and available on all good digital audio platforms wherever you are in the world. I'm in conversation with Clive Butkow. He's the managing partner of Condusive Capital, and we're chatting about venture capital. We're talking about Africa, about entrepreneurs, about creating that next big billion-dollar business, and how do we get there and where do we start? Clive, you and I have been chatting about kind of the potential that South Africa has and how important it is to develop entrepreneurs. Maybe take us a little bit behind the scenes in terms of somebody might be listening. They might have a great idea. They might say, gee, I've got this great payment concept, or I've got some idea that'll play in the tech space. How do people go about accessing venture capital? What are some of the common mistakes people make when they try and kind of get a relationship going?
Well, I think firstly, venture capital is more investing in growth capital than in ideas. We don't invest in ideas. We invest in businesses, not even products. We like to invest in a business that's got unit economics, that's got revenues, that's got referenceable clients, and it's growing double-digit month on month. And I think that's the misnomer. A lot of people think they can go to a venture capitalist with just an idea. It's unlikely any venture capitalist is going to invest in an idea. That's where you need to start speaking to angels and seed investors, but not venture capitalists. Venture capitalists, if you look at the risk profile of a venture capitalist, I don't like to take product risks. So the product must be developed, number one, developed and out there in the market, and the dogs are eating the dog food. So the customers are actually using the product. I don't like to take founder risk because the founding team is established. They're working together. They're a great team. They're 18 players, and they've got They've got someone that can build the stuff in a tech business, the hacker. They've got someone that can sell the stuff, the hustler, and they've got someone that can design stuff. The hipster. They can really, really design exceptional UI or product interface, whatever it might be. So that's when we get involved as a venture capitalist. So any listeners, I think if you want to raise capital at an idea stage, you're going to have to go and kiss a lot of frogs in terms of find angel investors. Don't go to venture capitalists because it's too early for a venture capitalist. My second lesson, even once you have got traction, you've got product market fit, you're getting referable clients, you've got good growth, go and see what the venture capitalists invest in. So I invest in tech venture capital, but I still get people building a product or a retail product coming to me for capital or property to come to me for capital. But you need to go and do a little bit of analysis of what does the venture capitalist do? What are they investing? Because really you're just wasting my time and you're wasting your own time. Rather find someone that's in your vertical or in your domain. The next lesson I'd say is, we call it PAR, prepare, anticipate, and rehearse. You've got to be prepared for that pitch. Go onto the internet and see the 12, 13 slides you need to pitch to a venture capitalist. The introduction slide, the problem slide, the solution slide, the product slide, the team slide, the market slide. Those are the standard slides that we want to see as a VC. And I'll say the most important thing, Warren Buffett says accounting is the language of business. Know your numbers. Know what it costs you. Know how much cash flow you've got. Know how much, when you're drop dead dates and you're going to run out of money. Know what you're burning every single month. Know what your cost of acquisition is. Know what your lifetime value is. You absolutely have to know this as an entrepreneur. Don't say, oh, sorry, my accountant's not here. I don't have that information. Because if you say that to me, this is a very quick session. You're out the door and you're not getting my money. Because you don't have to put the journal entries in, but you need to understand your finance of your business. You need to understand your income statement, your balance sheet, and your cash flow statement.
I think that's really great advice, and I think it's quite fascinating to listen to you because I think in some instances you look at it and you think, it's so obvious, but I think for many people it isn't as obvious as it seems. Now, if you do your research, if you're obviously exposed to a lot of these businesses in Africa, what kind of startups and what kind of tech are you seeing gaining traction in the African market, or what do you think will do well when it comes to African business?
I think, look here, there's things like, because Africa's got 500 million people called the missing middle where they've got discretionary income. So education, edtech, healthcare, health tech. If you look at agriculture to make, from a food supply point of view, guaranteed food supply, so the agri-tech businesses. And then you look at fintech, insurance, payments, remittances. All these types of businesses are really growing unbelievable traction because we do have 500 people plus South Africa, 800 million cell phones on the continent. Africa is a mobile-first economy, continent. It never went to landlines and then to mobile phones. So it's a mobile first. So all people that could never actually buy education or take out insurance or save money for their children's education can now do it. We've got those 800 million people. They've got good broadband connections. So there's such a big opportunity in Africa. And Africa, I believe, is the next frontier. There's 1.2 billion people in Africa. They say in the next so many years it'll be double that, 2.5 billion people on the African continent. And Africa has got significant challenges and significant problems. And for me, a problem as a venture capitalist is an opportunity. So an entrepreneur should see all these problems as solving problems because that's what entrepreneurs do. They solve business problems. They solve problems for consumers. They solve problems for businesses. And there's so many challenges and problems. So there's so many opportunities for entrepreneurs. So look at the problem that you're seeing, try and find a solution, particularly a tech solution to solve it. And if you start getting traction, you're more than likely be able to raise venture capital to take your business to another level and pour, fuel on the fire and take your business to a global audience.
Well, I think that's some great advice and some interesting insights there. Clive Butkow, he's the managing partner of Condusive Capital, a venture fund. We're chatting about business, entrepreneurship, and all those things that keep Africa's economy going well into the future. Clive, it's been great having you on the Sandton Times Hour, and thank you for making the time to chat to me. It's the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a quick musical break and more of the Sandton Times Hour right after this.
Your body is amazing. Give it what it deserves in 2024. Join Virgin Active today and get up to 4 months free. Or join on Premier at 25% off and train anywhere, anytime with unlimited access. Call 0860-GET-FIT or visit a club. virginactive.co.za. T's and C's apply.
Back for more?
The Sandton Times Hour continues.
Welcome to the second half of the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8. I'm Alexander Leibner, and that was Switch Disco, and Ella Henderson with React. And I think many people's bodies will be reacting after this week's chocolate onslaught that I am predicting in many households. Well, if you caught something intriguing during the show but missed all the details, don't worry. You can head over to the sandtontimes.co.za and explore the comprehensive show notes for a breakdown of all things that we mentioned in the show. If you want to get some further reading and some links, well, that's all there. And also, don't forget to connect with the Sandton Times on social media at Sandton Times on whatever preferred platform you enjoy. And also, you can post, DM, voice note, whatever it is that you do, and get in touch and share your feedback. It's always very welcome. This week, Syringa Park at Avianto Estate opened to the public in Muldersdrift, and I headed out of the familiarity of Greater Sandton to see what this new space was all about. I caught up with Darin D'Oliveira. He's the developer of Avianto Estate, and I asked him to tell me a bit more about this latest expansion.
Well, this is Syringa Park, which is a venue where families can come have fun. It's going to have one of the biggest play parks in the country, the My Fitness Play Park. It's got an epic go-kart track, which is on asphalt, so it's really state of the art. Cars have been imported from France, and they give you a real adrenaline rush. Got obviously this 9,000 square meter field, which is we call the Oval, where we've got the stage for musicians. And we're hoping to have some really good concerts here. We got Jeremy Loops on the 7th of April. So anybody who hasn't booked, come down. It's a Sunday afternoon on the grass. It should be very chilled and very relaxed. And Jeremy Loops is great. Yeah.
How does this fit into the greater Avianto offering that you've got?
Okay, so basically I've got 300 hectares, which is 3 million square meters of land. So it's a sizable piece of land. And we've got, the whole concept was a soft security. So we've got a boundary wall around the entire property, which is really just there to keep the real unwanted element out. But we allow public to come in. Then we have the tight security for each estate. So if you want to come visit me in my estate, you need a PIN and you need to go through the normal protocols. But if you want to come through to Syringa, you basically just driving in. We've got cameras which pick up LPR, license plate recognition if it's a wanted car. We've got 600 state-of-the-art cameras that are catching any activities that are going on. So the security is behind there. We don't put it in your face, but the beautiful part of it is that you can come enjoy yourself in a beautiful environment along the river that's safe, secure, and it's not going to cost you anything.
What are some of your highlights in terms of the park? Something that you particularly enjoy? I know it's a bit of an unfair question, but
well, I think is my highlight is just to see how beautifully it's turned out. It all came about during COVID and sneaking out here onto my land from the estate. Even our estate had lockdown, so we used to sneak out with our essential services certificates and have the kids in the back of the car underneath the blankets, and we used to come sit here on the banks of the river, enjoying some freedom after lockdown or during lockdown. And we sat with the family and we plotted. We said, this would be a beautiful venue to have a function venue, to have concerts, to have play parks, to have just people enjoying themselves. It was a hard concept when everybody was in quarantine and you weren't allowed to speak or talk to anybody. It was quite weird that we actually discussed it during the lockdown period. But I think now, looking back and just seeing what a beautiful job it's turned out as, and credit goes to our architect Rob De La Roche. He did a really good job, and it's I'm very, very chuffed, and I think everybody comes down here loves it. We're getting great reviews, and really good.
Well, you've got a very nice terrace here with a food and beverage offering. You mentioned some of the activities. Is there an entrance fee that people have to pay to come in, or do they sort of pay as they go?
No entry fee, and that's the whole beauty of Avianto Estate. There's no entry fee. At some stage we would look at a parking fee, but at this stage we want to get the numbers up, make sure that get as many people. We don't want to turn anybody away at the moment.
And then tell me about Avianto itself. It seems like you've managed to create almost a sovereignty in this estate. You've kind of managed to almost off-grid yourself on so many different things. Maybe you can just elaborate a bit on that.
Oh, look, it's been a long road. In '97, we built the wedding venue. From the wedding venue, I always envisaged this estate that would be self-sustainable. I very much believe in self-sustainability, and I think it's the way the world needs to go. We all got to look after whatever we are producing as far as waste and sewer and everything else. My concept, as I said, was to allow the public to the general areas, because you can then mix with everybody. You don't have to only be with your friends that have been invited. I can come in and meet somebody totally new, which is a great concept in your own estate. But then the hard security is still there. So security is number one that I think is important in the state. Number two is electricity. And I mean, the government's failing us with Eskom, and we have to do it ourselves. So I've created a company called Northlands Energy. We're doing really big projects, and I've got a lot of industrial parks, namely Northlands, Deco Park, and all of that whole precinct. And what we're doing there is we're putting solar on all the roofs. We're putting big battery backups, and we actually getting off grid, which is fantastic. So we're getting no outage on electricity. Now I brought that same philosophy through to here, and we are doing it on all the sectional title developments. So all the new developments that we're doing, we basically are guaranteeing that you got power 24/7, and we're not charging a premium for it. We're charging the standard Eskom rate. So you come in here, pay your normal Eskom rate, but you got power. Number three is water. I mean, now it starts with water shedding. I mean, people, electricity, you can get it, buy yourself a generator, put some petrol in, and you've got power. But water, where do you get water? You can't just get water. So what's fantastic now is that we've actually got boreholes that are producing 30,000 litres an hour. So we're in the process of building big central reservoirs. We're going to be doing filtration of the water, and we then will be having piped water to all the houses with a proper filtration that you're in control of it. And then the next element is sewer. What happens when the sewer plants don't work? 3 out of 20 plants in Magali are working. The rest are running into our rivers. So I want to take ownership of that sewer. I want to say, you know what? Let's do a recycle plant. Let's use that recycled water to water our gardens, to provide water to all the residents, and they will get that grey water at a fraction of the cost of normal water. And then waste. What do you do with all the rubbish that you're throwing away all the time? It's one thing trying to divide it, but where is it going from there? What we do is we've got a plant where we do all the recycling that gets sold off, and then all the waste we are busy. We are now busy with importing a machine from India, which incinerates all your waste. And the beauty is we put it right next to our nursery, so everything that comes out as compost, and you use that in the gardens again. So we don't need any council trucks that are on strike or whatever. It's all sorted. And the last thing that is obviously really important to all of us at the moment is your connectivity, Wi-Fi. And that we have actually got a fibre company that we're doing fibre throughout the estate, and we got a backhaul to the DFA connections there. So
briefly to come back to the park, you're going to be open for the Easter weekend. People can come along?
Definitely. We've got our soft opening for My Fitness. We will then be fully operational for the My Fitness kids from the Easter weekend. So yeah, it's a great place to come. The food's fantastic. I mean, we haven't gone with the franchisees. We've gone with people that it's their own business, and their food is really exceptional.
That was Darin D'Oliveira, developer of Avianto Estate, chatting to me about Syringa Park. And if you've got some time over the coming days, go check it out. I'd love to hear what you think.
Online, on air,
Anywhere, anytime.
this is the Sandton Times Hour.
So in February, we had Budget Day, which some people watch and some people don't really watch, and they just look at the highlights and see if the cigarettes and the wine and all the other sort of sin taxes have gone up, and if there's any significant impact in terms of finances that'll adjust your household's expenses or income. And now, as the weeks unfold after Budget Day, we start seeing some of the finer details flowing through, and you can start sifting through some of the information and seeing how does it impact you, how does it impact your company. And one of those things that might have not made a massive splash on the day of Budget Day, but is going to have an impact on your pocket, on my pocket, is the non-adjustment of the tax threshold, which sounds way more intense than it probably is in terms of your everyday experience. But here to explain it to you, here to explain it to me, is Beatrie Gouws. She's the BDO South Africa Tax Director. And Beatrie, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Beatrie, so let's get into this. What are we talking about when we're saying the non-adjustment of tax threshold for inflation?
So basically what happens on an annual basis is National Treasury takes into account the fact that your money is worth less year on year in South Africa. When they look at what the effect is of the tax rate, of the specific tax table rate that you pay tax on your particular income, they take into account that if your employer ups your level of income, then they want the rebates and the inflationary relief they give in a normal year to basically leave you in the same position that you would have been last year if your employer had given you inflationary relief as well. So then that assumes two things. One, your employer gives you an inflationary relief adjustment in your salary. So say, for example, your inflation is 6%, your employer gives you a 6% increase. So that means last year you could purchase for a certain value of money. This year you have slightly more money, but you can buy exactly the same value of goods that you could buy last year. But what happens from a tax point of view is if your quantum of your income increases, then it means unless there's an adjustment also for inflationary relief on the tax tables, it means that tax is going to eat more of your income. It's going to take more of your income. So what happens then from a government perspective, they say, well, we hope and we expect and we see that a lot of employers are going to give inflationary relief. So we would also like to give inflationary relief so that you can buy the same goods today that you could buy a year ago, assuming that everybody gave inflationary relief. In this particular year, that did not happen. So basically what government said is we don't have room within our budget to give you inflationary relief. And what that actually means is that we're not going to increase your taxes in the real sense, in that we're not going to give you an extra percentage that you now go from, say, 45 to 46 or go from 18 to 20, but we are not going to take into account the fact that inflation is going to take more of your money. So for those people who don't get an increase, they're going to be exactly in the same position in theory that they were in last year this time. However, they would very well know that they can buy less with that money than they would have been able to buy a couple of months ago. And that's just a factor of inflation, unfortunately.
Yeah, so not much has shifted there, but it still is impacting those households. We're talking about cents. I mean, there was also this talk about an increase of rats and mice taxes, so-called.
Yes, indeed.
What is the impact of that on sort of the middle tier earners?
At least the middle tier earners still has some money to spend in the sense of luxury goods. So when you look at excise duties on tobacco and on alcoholic beverages, kind of your entertainment, if you want to look at it that way, those typically go up on a year-on-year basis, and it's above inflationary increases. So if you want to look at how Treasury has structured their increases, most of the increases or incentives have been structured around the following things. It's green type of incentives. So things that are on bag levies, plastic bag levies, incandescent light bulbs, etc. So on the one hand, you want to go, oh, government, really, do you want rats and mice tax in that way? But on the other hand, if you want a more green economy and you want to go more towards let's save the environment, then making the switch from plastic bags to bringing your own bag and making the switch from light bulbs, kind of other type of light bulbs that take more electricity to incandescent light bulbs, that type of thing helps because it assists the government in incentivizing the right type of behavior from us. So in one sense, it isn't really something where you can go, oh, how does it affect me personally? It's more, is it something that I believe in? And if I believe in, then I accept the fact that I'm being moved towards being more green. I shouldn't use incandescent light bulbs. I should actually use light bulbs that use less electricity and be less of a burden on Eskom. the thing also here is there has not been a massive increase in terms of petrol, but the carbon fuel levy did increase in terms of 11 cents for petrol and 14 cents for diesel, effective from 3 April. So it's not the road accident levy, etc., that lies within the general fuel levy, but that would eventually impact in terms of the petrol price. So I think one of the things that we're also starting to look at is how does our behavior impact the environment, and what is National Treasury doing in terms of these little rats and mice taxes to kind of guide us in the right area. So the more that things like, for example, making use of vehicles that use diesel and that use petrol gets disincentivized by a high rate, and the more they try to push us via incentives, for example, towards the electric cars, and now there's going to be specifically an incentive to manufacture electric cars, the more we get that, the more the question is it worth our while, I suppose, as middle class and wealthy, to push against it, or is it, well, go along for the ride, find out how can I make use of this, even in a business capacity, and go with it and work towards a more greener economy.
Well, there you have it. Beatrie Gouws, she's the BDO South Africa Tax Director, chatting about, amongst other things, non-adjusted tax threshold for inflation this year, but also a couple of other things that are impacting South Africans across the board when it comes to your tax and paying tax. And it just shows you how important it is to plan for tax and actually factor that into your financial calculations, because there are some upsides and potentially also some downsides if you don't do it. We're going to take a quick musical break, and we're going to wrap up the Sandton Times Hour right after this.
The best of talk and music in 1 hour. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
This is the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and available on all good digital audio platforms. And that was Dua Lipa and Don't Start Now. Well, we're going to be ending things off, never mind starting things. And as we get into the final minutes of this week's edition, I headed off to a new Japanese restaurant based at the Leonardo in the heart of Sandton called AKIDO. I took a moment to chat to the executive chef, Chef Earl, and asked him to tell me a bit more about what people can expect from this new spot.
So AKIDO restaurant, first and foremost, my background, I'm actually a sushi chef for 18 years. I worked for Nobu for 6 years. And having to come to Johannesburg and take the job of opening an authentic Japanese where omakase is our fine point or our strengths. The initial ideal behind AKIDO when I opened it was that it should be a takeaway, but I think it transitioned to an omakase bar, which is a leave it up to you menu, which you can sit in front of the sushi bar and have different types of sushi tasting. And yeah, that's where we're at this point, which is a tasting menu of the finest of fish I can find. And I think at some point, I think aging of the fish is our niche. So that's what AKIDO is all about, yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the setup. What can people expect if they come to AKIDO?
I think AKIDO is a place where experience is a priority. It's more of a per-piece nigiri. I think we don't just hand things to you. We re-educate people what proper sushi is all about. I think that's most important. It's experience first, and then good sushi later. Yeah.
If you had to describe the menu in terms of what people can expect from the menu, what does that look like?
South Africa, it's not quite broad when it comes to fish selection. So I import the majority of my fish from Cape Town and fly them into Joburg. And from then we age the fish. So in terms of fish selection, I think we have your bluefin tuna, which is very much rare in Johannesburg. So I've brought it up here for Johannesburg to experience, yeah.
Why did you choose to open in Johannesburg? I mean, you mentioned you're from Cape Town.
Correct,
I mean, that's normally the place where people go for fine dining, but you've decided to come to Johannesburg and specifically Sandton.
Correct. So I think Sandton is it's the richest mile in Johannesburg. Luxury food is not for, I think it's not for everyone, and everyone that eats here knows what proper sushi is. Why Johannesburg? Sushi is very new, I think, in comparison to Cape Town. And once again, coming from a fine dining background, I'm here to present what proper sushi is all about. Mm. Yeah.
Who do you find has been coming to the restaurant so far? I mean, you only opened in September last year.
Yes.
So what kind of clientele have you had coming in?
Majority are Japanese, Chinese, Taiwanese. So our clientele is 80% actually Asian, which is very good. Because, once again, proper sushi, people are starting to recognize on a monthly basis, which is it's a plus for us. Yeah.
What do you think are some of the most common misconceptions when it comes to Japanese food for people who are not familiar with Japanese food?
Japanese food, I think in terms of sushi, which is once again our strengths, first things first is rice. The fish and rice temperature works a lot in terms of proper sushi dining. So, for example, the fish needs to be room temperature, rice needs to be very warm. And I think for us as a very premium restaurant, I think we import the majority of our goods from Japan, which is once again not a lot of complex flavors, but natural flavors and enhancing that. Yeah.
With good food also comes good drink or
Correct.
good beverages,
Correct,
and
yes.
you have got a very impressive lineup of sake or Japanese rice wine, if that's the correct
yes.
terminology for
Yes.
it. Tell us a little bit more about that menu.
So that having to come from once again, in Nobu, Cape Town, I have my selection of personal taste of sake. So I have brought that directly from Japan, a dozen bottles every month, and that has been a big plus for us because the Japanese loves their rice wine. So we import it on a monthly basis. Yeah.
Executive Chef Earl of AKIDO restaurant based on the street level of the Leonardo, and a really great dinner. Something very different. I mean, if you're into sushi, this is sushi on a very purist level, on a very different level. They let the ingredients speak for themselves, and they source some of the best dishes and ingredients that you can find to serve up some amazing Japanese cuisine. They do their own teriyaki sauce. They do their own soya sauce blend. Everything is done from scratch. Everything's done fresh. And this 14-piece sushi dining experience that you can go through. I mean, they literally prepare each piece of sushi by hand and present it to you one by one. So you don't just get 14 pieces thrown at you on a plate and then you're left to fend for yourself. No, the chef talks you through each piece of sushi, makes it, serves it to you. He recommends you eat it within sort of 30 seconds to get the full flavor, umami flavor, one of the flavors that are not lacking at AKIDO. And it's quite something. I mean, if you're going for a special dinner, if it's an occasion dinner, or even just for a business lunch, or you're looking for something quite different, or you're somebody who really enjoys learning about food, learning about different cultures, learning about Japanese cuisine, this is something that you want to go and try. And it's quite a hidden gem. They've only been around since September last year, so it's only been a short period. But I do encourage you to have a go and try the sake as well. There's some fantastic sake, and it goes so beautifully with the fish, with the sushi dishes, and also they've got a couple of other dishes on the menu as well if you want to try something a little bit different. And we'll put all the information up on the Sandton Times website as well if you want to go and check that out. Well, that's all we have time for this week on the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8, and it's always available on a favorite podcast platform, whichever one you're on, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, AfroPods, you choose it. And I encourage you to subscribe to make sure that you don't miss an edition any of the weeks. And also, during the Easter long weekend, why not take some time to catch up on some archived shows? It's always fun to listen to some interviews that you might have missed, especially if you're taking a long drive, and make the best of it. You can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za or connect on social media @Sandton Times and visit the website sandtontimes.co.za. If you want to send through some questions, some comments, some feedback, those are always welcome. Thank you to all our guests who made the time to be on the show this week, as well as Vincenzo. Thank you, and hope you have a good Easter break. And thank you to the Sandton Times team, as well as everyone at Mix 93.8. Let's wrap up the show this week, and that's to play out with another Mikasa. I believe last week's Mikasa fell off the table somehow. Another technical. But anyway, let's try and redeem ourselves with another Mikasa and Malik Harris with Who Cares? Have a safe, blessed, and relaxed Easter weekend. Thank you for listening, and let's do it again next week.